My ex-wife came back after 3 years, then revealed the secret that changed everything. The knock on my door came at 11 at night, 3 years to the day since she signed the divorce papers and walked out of my life without looking back. I opened it expecting a neighbor, a delivery, anything ordinary. Instead, I found her standing there in the rain, soaked to the bone, holding the hand of a little boy I had never seen before. A boy with my eyes. If you believe that love finds its way back, even after it seems completely lost, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me you believe in second chances. Share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Love Tales so you never miss a story like this one. Now let's get back to it. My name is Daniel Hart. 3 years ago, my wife Claire left me. There was no big fight, no screaming match. The neighbors would remember, no dramatic scene. She simply packed 2 suitcases, one Tuesday afternoon while I was at work, left a note on the kitchen counter, and disappeared from the life we had built together for 6 years. The note said she was sorry, that she needed to go, and that I shouldn't try to find her. I remember reading it, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, watching the closet doors hang open with half her clothes gone, feeling like the floor had been pulled out from under me. For months after that, I barely functioned. I went to work because I had to, came home to an apartment that echoed with silence, and stared at the ceiling most nights, wondering what I had done wrong. We had been happy, or so I thought. We laughed together. We planned a future together. We talked about children someday. And then, without warning, she was gone, and no explanation ever came. Friends told me to move on. My mother told me some people just aren't built for marriage. My own heart told me none of that made sense, because Claire had never been the type to run from anything. She was the strongest person I knew, the one who used to tell me that love means staying even when it's hard. So her leaving without a word broke something in me that took a long time to even begin healing. I threw myself into work, picked up longer hours at the architecture firm where I'd been junior staff, and slowly, painfully, built something resembling a normal life. I moved to a smaller apartment because the old one held too many memories. I stopped setting 2 coffee mugs out every morning. I learned to cook, for one, and somewhere around the 2-year mark, I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed, hoping it might be her. I told myself I had let go. I told myself a lot of things that weren't quite true. Then came that rainy Tuesday night, the same day of the week she had left, though I hadn't consciously registered that detail until much later. I opened the door and there she was, thinner than I remembered, her dark hair plastered to her face, her eyes red and swollen, like she'd been crying for hours before she ever knocked. And beside her, gripping her hand so tightly his small knuckles had gone pale, stood a boy who looked to be about 2.5 years old, with dark curly hair and a face that stopped my heart cold, because it was unmistakably, undeniably, a smaller version of my own. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. I just stood there in the doorway staring at this child, while rain dripped from both of them onto my welcome mat, and Claire's lips trembled as she tried to find words that had clearly been rehearsed 100 times on the drive over and had abandoned her the moment I opened the door. Finally, she said my name, just that Daniel, like it cost her everything to say it. And then she said, "Please, can we come in? I need to tell you something, and I don't know how to say it out here." I stepped aside. What else could I do? My hands were shaking as I closed the door behind them, my mind racing through 1,000 impossible explanations, refusing to land on the one that was staring me directly in the face. I got them towels, made tea neither of us touched, and sat across from Claire at the small kitchen table while the boy fell asleep on my couch, exhausted from whatever journey had brought them to my door. And then Claire told me everything. She told me that when she left 3 years ago, she hadn't known yet. She found out 2 weeks later, alone in a motel room in another state, staring at a positive pregnancy test, with no one to call and no idea what to do. She said the reason she left in the first place had nothing to do with not loving me, and everything to do with a fear she had never told me about, a fear rooted in her own childhood, watching her parents' marriage crumble slowly and quietly until one day her father simply stopped coming home. She said somewhere along the way she had convinced herself that every marriage was destined to end that way, that staying too long in something good only guaranteed a more devastating ending later, and that leaving first, leaving before it could fall apart on its own, felt like the only way to protect herself from the pain she had grown up inside of. I sat there listening, my tea going cold, feeling anger and heartbreak, and something achingly close to understanding all rising in my chest at once. She said that when she found out she was pregnant, She panicked even more. She was terrified. I would either resent the child as a trap that kept me tied to a woman who had abandoned me, or worse, that I would take the baby and shut her out entirely, punishing her the way she felt she deserved to be punished. So she made the hardest decision of her life, she said, staring at her hands the whole time she spoke. She decided to disappear completely, to raise our son alone, to spare me from a responsibility she believed I never asked for, and spare herself from a rejection she was certain would come. For 3 years, she worked 2 jobs in a city 4 hours away, first as a waitress, and later as an assistant at a small accounting firm that eventually hired her full-time. She named our son Ethan. She said she used to write me letters she never sent, dozens of them, sitting in a shoebox under her bed, telling me about his first steps, his first words, the shape of his laugh, which she said was exactly like mine. She said she told herself every single day that she was doing the right thing by staying away, and every single night she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. What changed, she said, her voice breaking now, was 3 weeks ago, when Ethan fell sick with a high fever that wouldn't break, and in the hospital waiting room at 2 inches the morning, terrified and utterly alone, she realized she could no longer carry this secret by herself. She realized that keeping him from me wasn't protecting anyone. It was only prolonging a wound in 3 lives instead of healing it in 1 conversation. She said, watching her son sleep in that hospital bed, she finally understood that she had spent 3 years punishing both of us for a fear that belonged only to her, and that no matter what I decided to do now, whether I hated her forever or never wanted to see either of them again, Ethan deserved to know his father. And I deserve the truth. I want to pause here and ask you something. If a secret this big walked back into your life after 3 years, would you be able to forgive it? Let me know in the comments, because what happened next in my story might surprise you. I sat in silence for a long time after she finished speaking. I looked over at the couch where my son, lay curled up asleep with one small hand tucked under his cheek, completely unaware that his entire world was being decided in whispered, broken sentences a few feet away. I thought about the 2 years I had spent grieving a marriage I didn't understand the ending of. I thought about every birthday, every first step, every fever, every small miracle of his life that I had missed without even knowing he existed. There was anger in me, real and justified anger, and I didn't pretend otherwise. I told Claire that what she did was wrong, that fear does not excuse 3 years of silence, that Ethan had a right to a father from the day he was born, not from the day she finally found the courage to admit the truth. She didn't argue with me. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face, and said I was right, that she wasn't asking me to forgive her tonight, or even this year, only asking me to let her son know his father exists. Because that was the one part of this she refused to keep taking from him any longer. I walked over to the couch and knelt down beside my sleeping son. I didn't wake him. I just watched him breathe for a long while. This small stranger, who somehow already felt like the most familiar person in the world to me. And in that quiet moment, something inside me shifted. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 years finally began to thaw. I realized that whatever anger I carried toward Claire, it could never outweigh the simple, overwhelming fact that I had a son, that he was alive and healthy and sleeping safely under my roof for the first time in his life, and that every single day I spent staying angry was another day I would lose with him. That night, I told Claire she could stay in the guest room, not because everything was suddenly forgiven, but because it was raining and it was late, and Ethan needed a stable place to rest his head. Over the weeks that followed, we talked more than we ever had during our entire marriage. We went to counseling together, not to rebuild what we once had necessarily, but to figure out how to co-parent a little boy who deserved both of us in his life, without the poison of resentment hanging over every conversation. It wasn't easy. There were nights I still felt the sting of 3 stolen years. Moments Claire broke down apologizing for choices she couldn't undo. But slowly, day by day, we built something new. Not the marriage we once had, but a partnership rooted in honesty this time. In a son who taught us both that love isn't about running from fear. It's about staying anyway and facing it together. Today, 2 years after that rainy night, Ethan calls me Dad, and calls the woman I eventually chose to build a new chapter with by a name that makes my heart swell every time I hear it. Claire and I never got back together in the way some of you might be hoping, but we became something better than the marriage that fell apart. 2 people who chose to put a child's happiness above their own old wounds, who found peace not in reliving the past, but in finally telling the truth about it. If there is one thing this whole journey taught me, it's that secrets don't protect the people we love. They only delay the pain and multiply it. Truth, however, late it arrives, however much it costs to say out loud, is always the beginning of healing. Before we go, I have a small request. If this story touched even a small part of your heart, if it made you think about forgiveness, about second chances, about the families we build even out of our hardest mistakes, please type the word family in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know how many of you out there believe, like I do now, that it's never too late for the truth to change everything. And if this story moved you even a little, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your own thoughts, share it with someone who might need this story today, and subscribe to Love Tales for more real, heartfelt journeys like Daniel and Claire's. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next story.